The first step is to cut your base of whatever shape you're doing. The base of a cylinder is a circle, so we're going to be tracing a circle on a slab and cutting it out. Here's an example of a larger cylinder container that I'm working on, which obviously is too big for a mug, but it works great as a container to hold other items. The base I used for this large cylinder was this circle template, which is on the clay cart. But this time I want to make a mug or something like that I can drink out of and pick up that's not too heavy. So I'm going to use just a lid that I found on the clay cart. And I need to roll my slab first. So for the walls of your container, you can use the slabs that Mrs. Schnauzer made. But if you're able to, try rolling your first slab or the slab for your base yourself. To start with my slab, you can see I'm just using my hand and kind of pressing it down into a thinner piece of clay. I'm not slamming it because that makes it uneven and it also disturbs the people nearby me. So I'm just using my palm and pressing down. This is flat enough for me to start. Notice I didn't start with just a lump of clay. I pressed it down first in my hands. This is as thick as my finger. That is exactly the size I want my slab to be. I'm laying these guides out and I'll be using a roller to roll it flat. Now my roller has to rest on my track that I just made here. So if it's too wide, it wouldn't be doing anything. So the rolling part needs to rest on the track. And if I press on the handles, it can be a little difficult to start. So I actually hold it on the rolling part and I am pressing down. The first time's a little hard, so I'm just slowly pressing and rolling. And it won't be that even at first, but I'll go back over it. Once it thins out a little bit, you can use the handles. You can see my clay is stretching out a little bit. I feel in the middle it's a little thick, so I'm just adding a little more pressure there. I'm standing to do this, leaning my whole body against it. It takes a bit of muscle in your torso and your arms. All right, so that's a nice even slab. See that? And as thin as my finger, nice and even all the way through. Perfect for me to cut my base shape. So let somebody else use these. They're going to go on the teacher table. If I'm cutting a straight line with the slab, I want to use this fettling knife. A lot of times it's not cleaned off, so you want to make sure it doesn't have dried clay on it. Scrape the sides on the slip container so the dried clay goes in there. I can't cut a circle very well with this knife. I'm going to use this just to cut straight lines. I'm cutting my slab in half. Somebody else can use this one. And I'm going to now use the pin tool. Now I can use this to trace. I could also just kind of press down on the lid. Now I'm going to be cutting with this pin tool very carefully. I can feel it on my canvas that it's touching the canvas, and I want to cut slowly. I like to cut pieces off at a time and turn as I go. It's easier to pull down than push up when you're cutting. Also cleaning off your pin tool. Any small pieces of clay can go in your slip container. Larger pieces like this, please don't put in the slip container. We'll be using those again, so just keep them in a pile. So I want to smooth it out a little bit. Anytime there's little pieces of clay sticking up like that, it's going to be sharp when it dries. So I want to just gently smooth down that clay. So there is the base shape, and now I'm ready for my wall to create the cylinder. This is a shelf support for our kiln. Nothing can be taller than that. Also, if you have your slab walls too high, we're using pretty wet clay here, then the walls will just start collapsing and not be able to hold straight up. It's a lot stronger if it's slightly shorter. So this wall template is about 4.5 inches, and I want to lay this down on a long slab to cut out the wall. Now I don't need it to be as long as this because you can imagine if I wrap it around my base, I'm only going to need a size about that big. So I have a slab here, but you can see that my slab is not as tall as the wall. So this piece wouldn't work for me. Now I could cut the pieces that are coming off and patch some areas if I don't have another piece to choose from. So I test it just by looking on the back side, and you can see here this one will work. Areas like this where the slab is not all the way together, I smooth down first. So I don't have to make the edges perfect, I'm just smoothing any pieces that come in a little far to make it stronger. I'm cutting a straight line, so I'm not using a pin tool. I'll be using the fettling knife. Now you can see the bevel here, that's the part that cuts, and you can see it angles down here. So the straight across part is where I hold it. Holding down the template and I'm slicing off any clay sticking off. And I'm at a weird angle because of the camera, so I like to turn. Remember, it's easier to pull down than go across or up. Again, you should feel the knife up against the canvas so you know it's cutting all the way through. And now my slab wall is all even across, and that was nice and easy for me. I didn't have to measure it. If you do want to measure it yourself, you can always use a ruler. We have these on the clay cart. and just make one straight cut and then line your ruler up and mark it however high you want it to be across your slab. Before I cut this slab here to make straight edges, I want to just test it to see how much of the slab I actually need. Okay, so I have a lot extra, which is good. Now, if I put it on the top of the slab, it'll be slightly skinnier of a cylinder, and if I put it on the side of the slab, it'll be a little wider. So I want to decide which works better. To cut straight lines, I always do use a ruler, so I'm cutting this round part off. When I use this fettling knife, I'm not pulling up and down. I'm holding it like any knife, and I'm pulling across. I actually like the skinnier version better for a mug, so I'm going to be putting my clay on top instead of on its side. And I'm just going to cut. I knew this is where it ended, but I'm going to cut a little bit longer. I'm going to score the top edge of my base. I want to score the edge of my slab. And now I need to add slip. It's much easier to slip the base. And you can see here I have a little bit extra. To cut it straight down, I'm going to use the pin tool. And I need to attach those two pieces, so they both need scored. So right now I'm pressing it together. If by chance you wrap it around and the base is sticking off a little bit, use a pin tool and cut that extra off. A nice easy blending tool to use is this flexible piece of metal. Lay it on that side so you can see. I'm gently scraping across where the seam is, where the two meet, to blend it together. Again, taking that extra little bit of clay off. To make it even stronger and look nicer, I want to blend the base to the slab. One thing you can do that's helpful, that extra bit of clay there, you can patch other areas. So I'm just kind of smoothing it in to areas that I see needs patching. All right, because this is a mug that I'm going to be drinking out of, I need to make sure the inside is nice and smooth too, and definitely the rim. So you can see here the seam is visible on the inside too. Now it'd be hard to use my tool for that, so I'm just going to hold it on the outside so it doesn't change its shape. And I can patch it again with some wet clay. I'm taking clay and making it kind of like putty. Put it in there like that and smooth it all the way out if you need a little extra clay. And this is a good place to stop. But the following day, I would work on my rim. You can always take it on the table, gently tap it to make it all level, and then just start smoothing it out. Because for slabs, you don't want it to be too wet. So a little crumpled newspaper inside so that it doesn't collapse, and then gently wrap it with some wet wipes. You don't need to worry about wrapping the bottom. And then you put it in your bag. Make sure your name is visible on the top. Don't twist or tie the bag. Just gently fold it under. The fact that there's not much air inside, that's what keeps it damp.